Before we get into the actual program tonight, I'm here to represent Ms. Leah Secondo. Leah is a sports journalist who currently broadcasts the games for the women's NBA down in Orlando, Florida, and she was scheduled to be tonight's MC. Due to circumstances that have arisen, she is not able to be here with us. However, the other day she did send me a note that she would like for me to share with everybody tonight. Dear Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Committee, 2001 inductees and guests, it is with great regret that I am not with you this evening to share in the joyous occasion of the 2001 induction class. My decision weighed heavily on my mind. It was extremely difficult to reach, and I do hope that you understand. The Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame has made such a positive impact on the community, bringing together and recognizing so many wonderful athletes. I believe the key word is together. Regardless of school or community team, the committee is trying to recognize the town of Enfield as one. There is certainly no better time in our nation to rally around those words. I hope that you will continue, as I have, to not just support the Hall this evening, but throughout the years. It is extremely important for the longevity of the Hall of Fame. Please know that you are all in my thoughts, and I truly look forward to joining you next year at this time. Sincerely, Leah Secondo. With those thoughts and sentiments in mind, I would ask at this time that if you could please all rise and join hands, please, if you would. Please join with me in observing at this time a moment of silence in memory of those of our fellow Americans who have been upset by this recent tragedy. Thank you. At this time, it's time to get on with our evening festivities. And at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Mike Cotton.
Thank you all for coming and thanks for being so patient. As Tim said, my name is Mike Cotton. I am the chairman of the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame. Tonight's a very special night for 8 inductees. They've all come from as far away as California. So I think it's going to be very, very special, and it's going to be a night to remember. A lot of you, I see a lot of new faces here tonight. A lot of them don't know the history of the Hall of Fame. It was a nonprofit organization started in mid-1995. A gentleman by the name of Bill Chaves started the organization by going before the town council in mid-1995 just to obtain the use of the town seal for this organization. At early 1996, Bill put together a committee of about 15 people at that time, and we held our first induction in August of 1996. We're welcome. Please, Bill Chaves, our founder, is here tonight. He is now the Assistant Athletic Director at Northeastern University in Boston, so if you can give Bill a nice round of applause. Pretty much the crew of 15 people have been here all 6 years. We seem to pick up 2 or 3 key individuals each year, and we look for more individuals to join the committee as time goes on. Tonight's evening is about teamwork, athletics, perseverance, and role models. Each inductee is a role model, as are the American people that were involved in the recent tragedy. As you know, Americans are strong and good role models. These inductees fit that classification as evidenced in their accomplishments that you see. I'd like to take this time to introduce our MC, Len Sparks, who is also a Hall of Fame committee member and has been with us from the very beginning. Len?
Thank you, and along with Mike and Tim, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's induction ceremony. I will have to admit that considering the events over the past week, I did struggle with, should we do this? What's the significance in light of all that's happened? And as I go through that thought process, I began to think of the inductees and reading their biographies, what they did, and the accomplishments, that these people are significant to America. They represent a slice of America, the American spirit. They're ordinary people who did extraordinary things. As we've said, they provided role models. There's coaches, players, and organizations. I read a book by Roger Kahn, a sports writer. He wrote The Boys of Summer. This book was The Memories of Summer. In that book, he talked about a time when he played golf with Mickey Mantle. This was after Mantle had retired. And they got to a hole that must have been, say, 350 yards. And Mantle, known for his low, long drives, hit a drive off the tee, and it landed 300 yards right in front of the green, middle of the fairway. Kahn said, that's a great shot. Mantle says, well, sometimes you have to sacrifice distance for accuracy. And that's what I think embodies the people we induct tonight and the past inductees. They've stayed that course. They've gone for accuracy. I'd like to introduce the mayor of Enfield, and I would like to say first that the town of Enfield has always encouraged the efforts of the Hall of Fame. They have been behind us, what we're doing within the town, and we appreciate that encouragement. And I would cite Lou Fiore, who is on town council and is our liaison between the Hall of Fame and the town council. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mary Lou Strong.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. One of the things, before I read a proclamation, I'd like to say all of the people that we're honoring tonight, and congratulations to all of you, have distinguished themselves in the field of athletics. And we know that this is the Athletic Hall of Fame. In reading the biographies, and I've noticed it before, never as much in the biographies of the people we honor tonight, how all of them have gone on in the field of education or working with children in some way. This is so important, and I think it shows their character not only, as I said, in the field of athletics, where they've distinguished themselves, but also as outstanding citizens and representatives to the town and for the town of Enfield. So I'd also like to congratulate them for that too. It is definitely my honor on behalf of the council to present a proclamation honoring the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame class of 2001. Whereas the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame was established in 1996 to recognize past and present individuals who have made a significant athletic contribution to the town of Enfield. And whereas the class of 2001 inductees to the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame consist of Bob Brummage, Chris Corkum, Mike Melfa, Sharon Lebrecht, Jeff Wheeler, Joseph Lamanna, Nick Gaetani, and John Spellman. And whereas the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Committee will also honor the Polish and St. Adalbert's Athletic Clubs of Thompsonville with the George Daly Special Recognition Award. And whereas inductees and award recipients will be honored at the 6th Annual Induction Ceremony held on September 21st, 2001 at the Radisson Hotel in Enfield, Connecticut. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Mary Lou Strong, Mayor, on behalf of the town of Enfield, the Enfield Town Council, and all of its citizens, do hereby congratulate the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Class of 2001 inductees and the George Daly Special Recognition Award recipient, and be it further resolved that I hereby declare September 21st, 2001 to be Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Day in the town of Enfield, Connecticut.
I'd like to start with our first presentation tonight, the George Daly Award. I met George Daly in our first Hall of Fame meeting in 1995. George was an enthusiastic supporter of athletics in the town of Enfield. And his enthusiasm was infectious. I think it was probably one of the reasons why I got involved more with the committee. George gathered many biographies and provided a lot of history of sports in the town of Enfield. I did march with George in the 4th of July parade that year, and it was a long route because George kept going back and forth either side because he probably knew everybody along the way, and he was probably gathering information. I think he has inspired the committee, and I think a lot of things that we have done have been based on his grounding. Unfortunately, George, as you know, had passed away three days before the first induction ceremony. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Elena Daly to say a few words.
My family and I wish to extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Committee for the annual Special Recognition Award established in George's memory. He was very proud to be on the Athletic Hall of Fame Committee and worked very hard to help make it the very best. He made significant contributions to youth athletics and to the community. He had a great passion for sports. He left us with a lifetime's worth of gifts: his love, integrity, his sense of humor, and devotion. I want to extend my sincere congratulations to all of the inductees here tonight. I am especially honored to be able to present the George Daly Special Recognition Award tonight. Thank you.
Our inductee for the George Daly Award is the Polish and St. Adalbert's Athletic Clubs of Thompsonville. The Polish-American Athletic Club was organized in 1922, and it sponsored many baseball and basketball teams in Connecticut and Massachusetts area in the Polish League. And that was in the men's and women's level. They competed against semi-professional basketball teams. This was at a time when that was very prominent leagues in the state of Connecticut and Massachusetts. Many local prominent athletes went for tryouts in major leagues, and a lot of players, because of the economic conditions of those times, stayed in their jobs and did not go on to careers. I don't think you had seen the $10 million a year contracts at that time. The Polish-American Athletic Club was replaced by St. Adalbert's, and they went on to sponsor many baseball and basketball teams. And a lot of the athletes that went through those programs were recognized both at the local, national, and regional levels. I'd like to present Iggy Morawski, who will again present Adam Pierce for the award for the Polish American Athletic Club.
My paperwork together, yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me as a representative of the Polish community. And I would like some of you people, if you read the Journal Inquirer on September 4th, they had a great review of the Polish American activities for years. Also, somebody Polish American played, here's another one in December 29, 1932. The Southern Colored Champions opposed the Polish Americans on Sunday. Little paper here. Oops. Lost my pen. You probably remember, you don't remember this, but Collegians defeat Boston Red Sox. That's on June 28, 1923. It was played at Park Avenue Ballpark. Park Avenue used to be called Noblefield, now it's called the Mount Carmel Field. I appreciate you inviting me and the rest of you. And I'd like to get everybody that's a Polish passionate play for Polish Americans or the St. Augustine to please get up. Please get up. I'd like a moment of silence for all the boys that passed away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now begin dinner.
Our inductees represent coaches who have influenced and impacted the lives of a lot of people. And I think of that impression that coaches make on us. And I thought back to my high school days at Gilbert High School in Winston, Connecticut. And I wasn't very much of an athlete in high school, but I remember our baseball coach, who was also the physical education teacher. And I was a senior at the time, and he started the job fresh out of high school, and he was a childhood friend of my brother's. And I knew him. He had been to the house a lot and all that. And one time we're in physical education class, and we're being taught the game of volleyball. And me, being a wise senior, made a not so nice remark about him. And he was across the floor, and he had a volleyball in his hand, and he turned and threw it and beamed me with the volleyball. And that's the impression that that coach had made on me. But I deserved it. And when I got home, I told my big brother about this, like he was going to take care of it. And his only remark was, it's a good thing he wasn't teaching you how to bowl. And I have a fear of volleyball to this day. In fact, a couple of years ago, at our church picnic, they had a volleyball game, and I thought, I'm going to overcome this fear. And I got into the game, and 2 minutes into it, I broke my finger. So I think it has the impact of Coach McClellan on that. Our next inductee is Bob Brummage. Bob has been the coach at Enfield High School baseball coach at Enfield High School since 1967. At Berlin High School, Bob played varsity baseball for 4 years, and his team won the league championship each year. And Bob went on to Wilbraham Prep School, where he played football, basketball, baseball, and was captain and most valuable player. In his career, he played in Canada, and in one game, he was a pitcher, and in one game struck out 24 batters in a 9-inning game. And he played baseball at Springfield College, and arm problems ended his career. And it would have been easy, I guess, to say, well, that'll be it. I'm not going to do anything else with it. But he went into coaching and played in the Twilight League and the Tri-County League in Western Massachusetts. In his coaching career, he coached a team in the Netherlands, a professional baseball team, and was named Connecticut High School Coach of the Year in 1995. And there have been many players that he has coached that have gone on to baseball careers. 3 signed major league contracts. And this past year, Bob brought the Enfield High School to their first league championship in the NCCC and to a second place finish in the Connecticut State Tournament. I'd like to introduce Bob's wife, Cookie Brummage, an inductee from the class of 1996, to present Bob to accept the award.
Thank you, Len, and honored guests. I would like to congratulate the other recipients of tonight's awards, and especially Chris Corkum and Jeff Wheeler, 2 of my former players and in different sports. I would have loved to watch Jeff Wheeler and Russ Tyler play basketball together. Of course, it would have had to be a one-on-one game. Chris was one of the hardest working and certainly one of the most dedicated baseball players that I have had. I called Chris, I think it was 2 summers ago when he had 3 hits in a Twilight League game, and I said, Chris, if you can still get 3 hits in a game, I'm going to come out of retirement. I would also like to congratulate one of my former colleagues, Joe Lamanna, Joe was an excellent coach and served as quite a role model for his kids in all the years that I was there. As a youth, I used to meet my grandfather coming home from the Bigelow Mill, and I used to look forward to weekends when we would sit on the porch and listen to baseball games. When I was in kindergarten, I used to live in Enfield, and I moved to Berlin during probably around December, and I was immediately put into first grade. My father said this was the problem in my educational career. In my neighborhood, I was lucky when we moved. We had 15 kids about the same age, and we played sports, as I'm sure many of you did, by the season. I quickly became attached to baseball because there was something special about throwing a baseball. My father taught me much about baseball, and what he couldn't teach me, he bought me books. And I studied pitchers like Warren Spahn, Harvey Haddock, and Bobby Shantz, all lefties, of course. I was fortunate to have excellent coaches as I progressed as a player from Little League to college. My prep school coach put things in the right perspective. I was fortunate to play in his best season, and unfortunately, at the end of the season, he died of a heart attack. In 1977, I had a sabbatical leave, and I had the opportunity to coach pitchers for my former college coach. I have taken much from my former coaches. Baseball and coaching has afforded me many opportunities. In high school and prep school, I was scouted by many teams. In summer school, before prep school, I played on a team from Stonington, Maine, and took a lobster boat to a game. After my freshman year in college, I played in Alma, Quebec, which was 3 hours north of Quebec City. I didn't even know people lived up in that area, let alone play baseball. In 1977, I was lucky to have a sabbatical leave from the school system. I finished my 6th level degree, and I went to the Netherlands to coach baseball. During 1986 and 1990, my wife and I took the field hockey teams and the baseball teams to Holland twice, and subsequently we had 2 teams from Holland come to Enfield on an exchange program. When I received the notice from Mike about this induction, I was informed that my speech was to be 4 to 7 minutes long. I immediately called Bill T. And Bill told me that there was a mistake, that it's really 40 minutes. I have always enjoyed teaching and coaching in Enfield. I think the players that I have had have always exhibited a desire to compete, have demonstrated excellent sportsmanship, and have gone on to be very successful people. Memories of games are always enhanced with the times. Batting averages are always inflated, but the personal relationships that are developed between coaching and teaching are lasting. Teaching and coaching has been a very rewarding and challenging experience. I would like to thank the Enfield school system, the Board of Education, and all the administrators that have helped me the past 36 years. I would like to thank Carl Angelica for giving me my chance to start coaching. I would like to thank my wife, my friends, and family for their continued support. I have been fortunate to have had excellent support from assistant coaches, Bob Prasadi, Joe Basowitz, and more recently, Dave Vazina, Brian Riley, and Brad Tweedley, all former ball players. Special people like George Tomalonis, who runs our Florida trip, Bo Kalinsky, Randy Smith, Sherman Kane, Kevin Johnson, and John Erickson from the newspapers who give support and constantly put our players in the press. People like Darryl Crowley, who give their time to go to Florida and umpire and support the kids. Our booster club at Enfield High School has been very supportive of our baseball program. I would like to thank Jack Dennehy, who gave me my first coaching job in 1964 and 65 with the Berlin American Legion team. We played 50 games with a $100 budget. I have always considered my athletes to be special people, and to them I give thanks. I especially would like to thank last year's team, who lost in the championship game but were league champions. They were the epitome of what we strive for as coaches. The coach from Staples at the end of the game said that we were the classiest team that he played. This, to me, is the highest compliment that he could have afforded us. I would like to thank you for this award. I appreciate the opportunity to be permanently connected with the many sports people of Enfield. Thank you.
Our next inductee is Chris Corkum. And when I read the biography on Chris and the stats and everything, it really wore me out. I mean, the things that he has done, the things he's been involved in, it's just phenomenal. He started his career in the Thompsonville Little League, 1961, and he went through the Senior League and American Legion baseball. He had a team leading a batting average of .450 in 1970. Then he played varsity baseball at Providence College, and his team was ranked number 2 in the New England Division I. But he's playing in the Western Massachusetts Tri-County Baseball League since 1979. He's compiled a .354 batting average in 568 games. He's been named to the All-Star team each year since 1981. And he's led the league in hits, doubles, runs scored, and games played. And he has a .450 batting average and led his league in hits, runs, doubles in the Connecticut Men's Senior Baseball League. He played 7 years in the Hartford Twilight League with a .307 batting average. He's a high school baseball coach from 1977 to 1982 in Warren, Rhode Island. He's coached at East Granby, East Windsor, and he started the Chris Corkum Baseball Incorporated in 1984 with 30 camps running annually in Connecticut and Massachusetts. Chris is currently a sports psychology instructor in the Enfield continuing education program. I'd like to introduce Charlie Ragnow from the class of 1997, who will bring Chris to accept the award.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I've had a very rewarding, fun sports experience, and I really have no plans on ending it. It's been the greatest part of my life, and there's a number of people I'd like to thank for helping me along the way. First of all, I think we must note our veterans of our foreign wars who provided my generation time in which to play our games while they had to sacrifice their youth somewhere far away. I'd like to mention the Thompsonville Little League, because growing up, that was the kingpin of our lives. We used to love that field behind the Mount Laurel. To us, it was like Fenway Park. I see a lot of people in the audience tonight who were involved with the Thompsonville Little League. I can't say what an enjoyable, wholesome place it was to play. I'd like to thank my parents, and really, I'm probably standing here tonight because of my ability to hit a ball or teach hitting. And my parents started me off pitching me in the backyard, age 6 and 7, and they always kept it fun. And probably what helped me the most, they didn't tell me how to do it. We just went out there and did it. Every afternoon in the summer, 12 o'clock after lunch, my mother would pitch to me. That's why she looks so young today. And my father was a Little League coach, a great coach, honest, fair, organized, and my next batting practice pitcher, and he still has knots on his shin bones. That was the days before the L-shaped screens. My wife, Paula, who's always supported me in my role as a player, coach, business owner, and in times of frustration, I always think back to what she told me one night. And for a couple of weeks, I was struggling. And I won't even mention the word. It's a 5-letter word, begins with S, ends in P. I won't even mention what it is, but I was about 5 for 52. 0 for 23 is bad, but 5 for 52 wears on me. I'd call up my friends and say, look, what do you think I'm doing up there? Am I striding too hard? Am I swinging up? And when I got off the phone, my wife said to me, did you ever try just watching the ball? Number one thing, I always go back to that, so thank you. My son, Kevin, who is a tremendous motivator. In fact, one night back in 1997, it was the first night of the Tri-County playoffs up in Holyoke. And we were down 1-0 in the 5th inning. The rain was pouring down. We had 2 outs, runner on second. If I had made it out, the game was over, and we would have lost the first game of the playoffs. If I could get this guy in, the game would be tied, and they'd call it. Well, I was up there, and the first swing I took, I think, was the worst swing I ever took in my life. I fouled the ball off between my legs. Next pitch, same thing. Now the rain's coming down, it's coming off my helmet, and I hear a little voice say, come on, Dad, you can do it. Now, if that's pressure, that's pressure. I said, how am I ever going to come through now? And luckily, I got a good pitch to hit, line to single, and that night, riding home in the car, he turned to me and said, you know what, Dad, that was the greatest thing you ever did. And that's one reason why I keep going. I want to mention my coaches, Bob and Cookie Brummage, who are a second family to me from my junior year in high school right through college. My Legion coaches, Porter Glynn from South Windsor and Bill Spanswick, who's here tonight. My college coach, Alex Nahijan, who said this, when you're about 45 years old, you realize how smart I was. And he was very smart. I say the same things he says all the time now. I'd like to mention Dan Brooks. Dan manages Chris Corcoran's Baseball Incorporated, has energized and put new ideas into our business for the 21st century. I'd also like to mention 2 of my most important teammates. They're brothers from East Windsor. One was Steve Mooney, and Steve and I played together from 1969 to 1999. We had our 30th anniversary in 1999. I think sometimes we saw more of each other than we saw our families. And his brother Chris, who was born in 1969, has been my teammate for the last 7 years. And what these guys are, they're the perfect teammates. They pick you up when you're down, they pat you on the back when you do good, and sometimes they really tell you like it is. So I appreciate them being great teammates. Also, one of my great teammates is here tonight from basketball, and that's Mike Shirley. Mike was my next-door neighbor across the street, and we had to play 1,000 wiffle ball games together in our lower pasture. We made a baseball field, a chicken wire fence, and spent a lot of time having fun playing sports. I would like to also send my appreciation to my students at East Windsor High School, the greatest kids in the world, great motivators, and they're real people. And also my fellow teachers who are here tonight, I really appreciate you being involved in this evening for me, so thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank 3 of my role models, and they probably don't even know they're my role models, but one is Howard Brummage, and Howard looks like he's 30, he plays like he's 25, and about 2 years ago, I was walking out of New England Health and Racket, and I saw Howard. And we got to talk, and I said, yeah, I'm going to be playing another year. I said, geez, I'd like to play as long as I can. And Howard said this, once you reach the age of 45, your body stays the same about age 60. So with that in mind, Howard, I'm still going. So. I'd also like to mention my other role model. In fact, I introduced him as my role model to my East Windsor High team, and that's Russ Tyler. And I'll say this about Russ. On the basketball court, he talks the best trash of anybody. But I'll tell you this, he always makes people feel good and feel good about themselves. And for that, I'm highly appreciative. So thanks, Russ. When I first started my coaching career, it was actually as an assistant basketball coach at East Windsor High School. And Mel Kleckner has always been one of my role models. He retired from teaching in the early 90s. I missed seeing him, and he's here tonight. And for a young guy coming up who was a little bit excitable, a little bit disorganized, he really helped me to be able to think things through and to mature in a proper way, so I thank him for his guidance. But I'd like to leave future athletes, or future generations of athletes, is a couple things. Number one, dream. Teach our kids to dream, because if you don't have a dream, you can't have a dream come true. Teach your kids to lay on their bed and picture in their mind doing great things at whatever they want to do. Have them set goals. I had a crazy idea one New Year's Eve, that it was New Year's Eve 1990. I said to myself, I want to set a goal that by the end of 1999, I'd have 1,000 hits for the decade. And to do that, I'd have to get at least 100 hits a year. I'd have to make sure that I always stayed in shape, that I'd work at my craft all the time. And the great thing about setting a goal was I was able to surpass that and do it a year early. And I'm not saying that, I'm not blowing my own horn for getting the hits, but the important thing we have to do with our kids is teach them to dream and set goals. Highly important. Number three, from my college coach, take care of your body. You only have one. Put good fuel in it. Number four, practice on your own. With our kids, if they just practice when the team practices, they're only going to get better at the same rate as anybody else. Teach them the love of practicing on their own, and also have a practice partner. I think my first practice partner was a guy on Ellis Road. His name was Joe Caruso. And together, Joe and I probably impounded about 50 bats from Coach Brummage's bat closet. And our car was called the Batmobile. So not only did we have to find balls, we had to find bats. And he was my first practice partner. And we'd go all around the Valley Wheel and hit on the other team's fields. And I've always had a good practice partner over the years. And I have one now for keeps. That's my son, Kevin, who knows my swing better than anybody else. Also, it's important, as we mentioned, to teach kids to be a good teammate. As you mentioned with the Mooney brothers. Be the type of person that pats somebody on the back when they do well, consoles them when they don't do well, be the first one there, be the last one to leave. Be the type of player a coach wants to have on their team. Also, be a good opponent. In fact, I was telling my wife here that so many of you guys sitting out here have been my opponents over the years, and I'll tell you this, being the competitor that I am, I shake hands with you, but there's still that little wall between us. And I'd like to get to know you better, but we've been competitors, so I respect you. But sometimes you're not one of us from our team or whatever. So, but to be a great competitor, remember to win without arrogance, lose without excuse. And to tell you the truth, you want to play to win every time. My parents didn't realize this, but they created a love of winning in me. You know, today, to love to win is supposed to be politically correct, incorrect, I should say. But when you go to a doctor, you want somebody that cares about winning, of course you do. So winning is important to teach our kids to play to win. Because in the end, we don't play for plaques, we don't play for money. We play for the respect we get from our teammates, from the opponents, and from the people around the game. Also, stay positive. I remember one of the greatest players from Enfield was Mike Angelica. Mike used to play for the Chicopee Falls Tigers. And I was in one of those S, N's, and P thing again. And I was riding up to Zot Park, and I was saying, oh, no, they got all these tough pitchers, it's going to be a rough night. And I was getting pretty negative. And I drove by this car, and on the bumper sticker it said, expect a miracle. And I said, that's it. I've been thinking all these negative things. So it's so important to stay positive, because if there's one thing I learned, it's this. After a period of struggle, the greatest things will never happen to you if you keep working at it. Things that you couldn't even imagine. And just one thing, when I got Michael's phone call this year, I had not missed the Tri-County game since July 20th of 1987. And this year I had bone spurs. I was going to miss the first half of the season. And I was down. Asked my father. And I got a phone call at school, and I said, well, it's probably Mike calling for some information on some other guys. And I waited a couple days to get back to him, and the news was just tremendous. It's made me feel good for so long. So during a time of struggle, keep going, because something good is going to happen. The other thing I want to say is, too, is, and we talk to the kids at school about this all the time, if you don't quit, you'll make it. If you looked at my sophomore class in high school, I would be the least candidate to be standing here tonight. I got cut from 7th grade basketball, baseball, 8th grade basketball, baseball, 9th grade football, and they don't usually cut in football anywhere. 9th grade basketball. Finally, I made the freshman baseball team. I got 11 at-bats, went 0 for 11. And then the next year, I made the JV baseball team. I got called up to the varsity, 0 for 8. I came back to the varsity the next year, but I wasn't going to play much, and then a bunch of kids quit. And I got my chance to pinch hit, and I got it going pretty good, and it hasn't always been smooth since then, but what we tell kids, and it's important to spread the word, is if you don't quit, you'll make it. The other thing to tell them is enjoy the journey. The people, the places, the competition, that's what keeps us going. In closing, I'd like to take some words from another first baseman and say that with my great family, the teammates and my opponents I played against, my friends, students from East Windsor High School, and my faculty members, my co-faculty members, I'd like to say this. Today, like all days, but maybe a little bit more today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Thank you, everybody.
Our next inductee is Nick Gaetani. At one time in the late 40s, there were two semi-professional football teams in the town of Enfield, the Rinaldi Post and the Grays. And Nick played on the Rinaldi Post, and I guess in 1950 the two teams actually played against each other, and Nick's Rinaldi Post team won 7-6. He graduated from Enfield High School in 1945, where he played football, basketball, baseball, and ran track. He continued his sports career in the Navy until 1947. And in 1948, he was quarterback for the Grays AA football team. And in 1950, for the Rinaldi Post team. In the 50s, he played baseball for the Sunset Restaurant, the fast pitch softball team. And they were, at that time, considered the best team in New England. He coached youth baseball and youth basketball, and they won, his teams won several tournaments in the Springfield Daily News events. One of the key things was he helped establish the Gray AA semi-professional basketball team. That was through 1961 to 64. And in 1964, they won the New England Basketball Association Championship. As a coach, he coached numerous Enfield athletes and who went on into various sports. He's also an outstanding 10-pin bowler and has competed in many tournaments in the West Coast. I'd like to introduce Tony Romano from the class of 1996, who will present Nick for acceptance of the award.
Wow, what a night for me. I want to thank the Enfield Athletic Hall of Fame Committee for voting me into the Hall of Fame of Enfield. It's a great honor for me to be here. I grew up in Enfield in Thompsonville, as it was known, not Enfield. Enfield was the town of Enfield. Thompsonville was the biggest town in the town of Enfield. When I was growing up, like I was 10, 12 years old, my first coaches, I remember this, in baseball and in basketball, were two men that I really admired. One was Iggy Morosky, the other one was George LaGrange. And George coached me at A.D. Higgins Grammar School. I really appreciated them. I always thought the world of them. I was just a little runt, but they knew I was quick, I was fast, and I tried to give them all I had. Growing up in this town, I met many, many beautiful and wonderful people. When I graduated from Arnold College, I had these teams, and I had so many great athletes. It would take me all night to mention all the names. But I will say this. I moved out to California in 1965, and I had some great, great times out there. In fact, I was doing tickets for the San Jose Bees, who were affiliated with either the Kansas City Royals or the Los Angeles team. And one night, after the game was over, I met a gentleman that used to come to the games every night. The Bees were at home. And in talking, we got acquainted, and he asked me where I was from. And I told him, Thompsonville, Connecticut. He says, I was from Springfield, Mass. His name was Bill McNeil, and he used to coach either Gilbert and Barker or somebody. And he said, I remember the teams from Thompsonville. He says, there were some great baseball players there. He says, I remember a boy, he says, that I never saw a guy hit a ball as hard or as far as this boy. I said, what was his name? He says, I can't think of his name, but they called him Cookie. I said, there was only one Cookie that I knew that could hit the ball that far and that hard. That was Ed Cookie Kakuka. He said, that's it. That's the name. And I know I was here, and I think I told him this story last time I was in town last year. And I said, I remember as a kid being down at Dingle Playground, where Ed used to hit him up into the Highland Park Hills. And that had to be at least 350 feet. As a kid, I remember that. And he was a great baseball player. All the teams and all the boys that I coached in all the leagues that we were in all the tournaments that we had, I can honestly say all these boys gave me 110%. Every one of them was great, not only as a player, as an athlete, but also as an individual. And I want to say to them, if I was a little part of your life, I'm so thankful for that. But all of you were a great part of my life because I was part of yours. I had some great fans when I was here playing on the East Coast. My fans were my sister Carmen, my sister Marion, and my brother Joe, who was here with his family. And they always gave me support, especially my sister Carmen, who's no longer with us. God took her from us last October. But she always told me, she always gave me encouragement. She says, whatever you do, play as the best you can. That's what I always try to do. Then on the West Coast, when I arrived there, I met a gal that I married. Her name is Alice. And she became my biggest fan when I played flag football, when I bowled, when I played fast pitch softball. And my other fan there is my niece, Leah Ventura. Leah is in a wheelchair, but you should see her bowl out of that wheelchair. And she bowls good, she says, because I'm her coach. So I appreciated them. All the boys that I coached, I really appreciated their part of my life. And I think they did appreciate me. And my pride and joy in my coaching career was my Grace basketball team. the team that won the New England Championship in 1963-64. And these fellows were, like I say, my boys. Tony Romano, Dick Leonard, Fran Mackey, Sonny Ignat, Bobby Knight, Fred Clark, Tom Michaels, Carmen Perone, and Billy Spadger. I really appreciate all of you. And you know, without our sponsors in this town, where would our sports have gone? Our sponsors were great in this town. And I'd have to mention the Thompsonville Graves, Eagle Sanford, Rinaldi Post, Polish National Home, Knights of Columbus, Trianos, Silhouette, Machola Post, St. Patrick's, VFW, American Legion, Suffield Auto, Coffee Mill. Without all these sponsors, our kids would have had much, but they were always there for our teams. And I had a lot of assistants, especially like the Thompsonville Grays, John Conley, who was the president of the Thompsonville Grays. I had people like Bobby Ardioli. I had people like Duke Conti. They were assistants to me. John Purcello. So many of them. It's hard for me to remember all of them. But I really appreciated what they did in helping me coach all of these great players and all of these people. I want to thank all of you that are here in my honor, but you know I love you all. God bless you all.
A few years ago, I did some freelance writing for the Enfield Press, covering sports in the town of Enfield. And our objective was to cover sports that normally don't get a lot of press. And so I attended a lot of girls' sports. And when I went to the games, the crowds were very small, mostly parents of the girls that played. It's a little different than today, but this is the environment that Sharon Lebrecht was in her high school career, and was not discouraged by it. Sharon was a 1974 graduate of Fermi High School and played field hockey, basketball, and softball. In fact, the softball team, after losing their first game, went undefeated for 3 years. Sharon was recognized for most runs scored, stolen bases, batting average, which was .527. She graduated from Springfield College in 1978 and earned varsity letters in field hockey, softball, and lacrosse. She had a tryout in 1980 and made the U.S. national field hockey team, which, because of the boycott in that year, did not compete in the Olympics. Sharon has been a coach and is currently a DARE officer in Enfield and has been recognized for her work with the children of Enfield. I'd like to present Lisa Carrera from the class of 1978 to represent Sharon in accepting the award.
so was that 98, not 78? I think he made you a little older, Dad. Thank you, family, friends, Athletic Hall of Fame, and especially Sam Fiore, who was instrumental in my receiving of this award. Thank you. I have received a few awards and honors in my lifetime, but I have to say that I am especially proud of this award. I am proud of this award because becoming an athlete and athletics have been a major part of my life. I feel that becoming an athlete has shaped a large part of my character and personality. Athletics motivated me to be the best that I could be and helped me develop my competitive spirit. This competitive spirit has carried me through many adverse situations in my lifetime that if I did not possess this quality of competitiveness, I quite possibly could have failed. I became involved in athletics at a very early age. I come from an athletic family, and as far back as I can remember, we always were involved in some type of athletic competition. My father traveled for work, and a lot of times he would only be able to come home on the weekends. Even though my mother did not drive, she would walk us to the playground and to the tennis courts and get us involved with sports. Our yard was the center for athletic competitions for the whole neighborhood, and my mother was always the supervisor. I would just like to thank her for instilling that competitive spirit in me at an early age. I have an older brother who was very athletic. He was my role model, and I always tried to be like him. The highest compliment for me at that time was to be good enough in a sport so that my brother would pick me to be on his team with his older friends. Thank you, Brian, for teaching me athletics at a very early age. I also have an older sister, Lynn, who, although now is an avid tennis and paddleball player, was not too athletic at an early age. Lynn was more into reading, cooking, and crafts, but I could always count on her to be my personal cheering section. Thank you, Lynn, for your unwavering support of me. When I got to high school, I became very involved in athletics and my competitive spirit developed. A great part of that drive was due to my father. He used to take me to a softball diamond and hit softball after softball for me to field. He wanted me to be my best on every catch, hit, and throw. A typical post-game conversation did not talk about the great shoestring catch that I made, then fired to third for the double play, but instead he would mention how I could have gotten to that ball a little faster in the fifth inning. It was through this training that I developed my inner drive to be my best in every athletic competition that I was involved in. Thanks, Dad. To this day, you continue to be a source of inspiration for me in athletics. In high school, there was a core group of female athletes that made up the bulk of the teams at Fermi. We played every sport together, and because of this, we were really good. I would just like to say a thank you to Lori Lumsden, Donna and Diane Tesk, Sharon Benoit, Lynn DeLay, Gail Hutchinson, Diane DeRose, and Sarah King. You were great friends, and I was proud to be your teammate. I entered Fermi High School in 1972, the same year that Title IX was passed, but unfortunately, it was not being enforced. Oftentimes, we were denied practice time because the boys' team had to use the gym or the weight room. But we never let this get us down because we were athletes and we had a true love for the games we were involved in. We also had winning records at the end of each season, and that made us feel very proud. Our coach for field hockey, basketball, and softball was Carol Albert. I know Cookie can remember her. She was a very demanding taskmaster that made us give 110% at all times. But the hard work paid off, and it increased my competitive spirit and drive. If you were a good athlete in high school in my era, there really was only one place that you had to go to college. And that college was Springfield College, right? I didn't think about going to any other school because I was an athlete, and Springfield College was the best. Springfield College had the best athletes from every high school and country in the world. So if you tried out for an athletic team, you were practicing against the elite every day in practice. And you were expected to be in top form in every drill in practice every day. The coaches didn't need to spend time pumping up the players. You were an athlete, and you were representing Springfield College. Therefore, you were the best. This attitude was embedded in every athlete in Springfield College, and our years of undefeated records and championships proved this to be true. Also, when I was at SC, I was there when Title IX was not in effect yet. I remember fighting for equity for the women's sports teams. In 1976, we were playing for the National Field Hockey Championship in Philadelphia. The college stated that there was no money in our budget to send us, so we had to ask our relatives for money so that we could rent 2 vans and drive to the national championship. After many irate phone calls from various family members, the college gave us $20 each for food for the 4 days at the tournament. When I came back from the tournament, I researched the football budget, and I remembered the disparity between the 2 sports. One thing that always stuck out in my mind was that the football budget had a line item for $200 for bubble gum in it. I thought about how my field hockey teammates and I had just struggled to get enough money to represent the college at a national championship. And they said that they didn't have any money to send us, but yet they could spend $200 on bubble gum for the football team. But I was an athlete, and I had learned to have inner drive, and I did not give up in my pursuit until this disparity was exposed and eventually corrected. Even after college, this inner drive motivated me not only in athletics, but also in my life. I remember my first day at the police academy. I was selected to lead the 50 men and 4 women of my class in exercises every morning at 5 a.m. I had to follow a prescribed set of exercises that the academy had developed. Most people thought that it was hard. I never did, because I was an athlete and I had inner drive, and I always gave 110%, and I was the best. Athletics and becoming an athlete definitely contributed to the development of my personality and character. My competitive spirit and drive have helped me not only on the athletic field, but off the field as well. These qualities carried me through many adverse situations, and I believe if I did not possess them, I would have failed. I know that I will always be involved in athletics throughout my lifetime. My latest athletic endeavor is yoga. Yoga is a great workout, and it develops your total spirit, mind, and body. At the end of each class, to show our thanks and gratitude to each person in the class, and to acknowledge the divine within all of us, we put our hands to our heart center and say namaste. So to once again thank all of you for honoring me as an athlete, I say namaste. Thank you, everyone.
Our next inductee has been a familiar name in Enfield athletics for a number of years, Joseph Lamagna. Joe played football at Springfield at Cathedral High School, and just short of graduation was drafted into military service and finished his high school career at Suffield Academy. He lettered in football and baseball, and then he played 4 years at Boston College. Most significant, he was head coach at Enfield High School from 1963 to 1974. and his 1968 football team was undefeated. He was also the golf coach from 1975 to 1985. I'd like to introduce Joe Basowitz from the class of 2000, who will present Joe Lamagna for acceptance of the award.
This afternoon, my wife timed my speech, and it was about 2 minutes, and she said, you gotta go at least 30 seconds longer. So, you know, I consider family the most important part of your life. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my family. My wonderful wife, Wanda, for 50 years. How she put up with me for 50 years, I'll never know. My daughter, Lorna, and her husband, Bob Hurwitz, and my granddaughter, Amy, who is quite an athlete in her own right. She's a soccer player and basketball player in the town league of Sharon, Massachusetts. Also at our table is a very good friend of mine who was my partner at Enfield High School, Bob Lingle. And Bob was a swim coach at Fermi High School, and he's presently coaching Enfield golf team. He says he's an amateur, but I still think he's a professional. I had the privilege of playing for some great coaches that had an influence in my life. Billy Wise at Cathedral, Warren Twilliger at Suffield Academy, David Fitzgerald baseball at Suffield Academy, and Buff Dinelli at Boston University. It is an honor for me to be an inductee with the class of 2001. I had the pleasure of being an assistant coach to Carl Angelica for 13 years. I consider him to be the finest coach in Enfield. He had a great influence on my coaching career. I was fortunate to coach in Enfield, which produced the finest young men and women in athletics. And before I close, I would like to congratulate the Polish Athletic Club. I remember when I was a youngster, I used to watch the St. Albert's basketball team play at the Polish National Home, and I think you charged about 10 cents, and it was the greatest 10 cents I ever spent. And I would like to congratulate Bob Bremage, who did a fine job with his baseball team, and he just missed the state title by a run or so. Any guy that can coach calculus or teach calculus, he's got to be a great coach. And my favorite female coach, of course, is the one and only Cookie Brumage. And in closing, I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to thank the Hall of Fame Committee for including me with the previous great coaches, teachers, and athletes. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee is Mike Melpa. Mike began playing when the North End played the South End in baseball. He was a 1939 graduate of Enfield High School and played varsity basketball and baseball. He was assistant baseball coach at Hartford Trade School in 1940 to 42 and played basketball for over 20 years with the Mount Carmel Gray's team, Vic's Restaurant, Springfield Armory, Rinaldi Post, and Holyoke League. He played basketball and baseball for the Springfield Armory AAA League in 1947 and was their all-star first baseman. Coached the Thompsonville Grays, the Enfield American Legion teams, Little League baseball for 7 years, and managed the Rotary Club team and the 10 to 12 age group. Won a championship in 1964. He's also past assistant director of the Enfield basketball summer and winter programs. I'd like to introduce Matt Pilska from the class of 1998, who will present Mike Melfa for the award.
He's only my best man. Believe it or not, he stood up for me when I got married. All squared away.
Good evening, everybody. We heard some wonderful speakers here this evening, and I listened to them attentively, and they were all very, very good. Thank you for your warm applause. I would like to extend my gratitude to the committee for selecting me into the Enfield Hall of Fame, which is a great honor, believe it or not. I congratulate all the members that were selected this evening into the Hall of Fame. If you don't think I'm nervous, I can hear the water on my knees splashing. I asked Mike Cotner if I could speak more than 5 minutes. He says, yes, Mike, you can. After that, he said to me, why don't you go to Spain? They get paid for throwing the ball over there. The first basket I ever made was for the other team, believe it or not. I still remember it. No kidding. I always thought I was playing, I thought I was going to be forward. But my Uncle Pete made me as a guard, and as being a guard, I was closest to the basket, right? I got the ball, and I put it in. Clapping hands and say, wow. My uncle gave me holy heck. Mike, you scored for the other team. I always remembered that. I had some excellent managers and coaches during my career in basketball, baseball, and football. I'd like to mention them. I had Adam Kaminsky, Tilly Walker, Bert Henry, Al Miles, Mike Tancredi, Hop Riopel, Jack Barry from Holy Cross, Wally Legenza, George Bellico, Bucky Angelica, Sam Nigro, also one of our Hall of Famers this evening, Coco Catania. And last but not least, Carl Angelica. As for thrills in my athletic career, I remember we played West Springfield High. We played them at Enfield High School, and we beat them. They must have had a record of about 45, 50 games. And I think this gentleman played one of the most terrific games of his life. George LaGrange drew in 22 points that day. Not only that, West Springfield High, that had a small gym in West Springfield, they rescheduled the game, and believe it or not, we traveled to Westfield. We played at the Westfield Armory,
We got beat by 1 point. But the only thing is this, that I must say that when we played, definitely not, we didn't have no pep bands. We had drum corps. We had the St. Adolphus Drum Corps, Stanley Dania, and Mr. Pierce. They played, and the VFW Drum Corps. And we played in front of the largest audience at that time of 2,200 people. Now, that was a lot of people in those days, believe it or not. I've been to some basketball games at Enfield High. Scarcity. Hardly anybody goes. So before I leave, as Kirby Puckett of the Minnesota Twins stated that when he was installed into the Baseball Hall of Fame, he says, now I know that I could play with anybody in the Hall of Fame. And as for myself, I know now that I can play with and against these Hall of Famers in baseball, basketball, and football in the Hall of Fame. Thank you very much, and you've been a wonderful crowd.
Our next inductee had a phenomenal athletic career, John Spellman. John Spellman was born and raised in Somersville, Connecticut. At that time, residents of Somersville attended Enfield schools. He's a graduate of Enfield High School class of 1918. He played football and he was a wrestler. And he attended Brown University and continued on the football team there, which was a prominent Ivy League team, and was named team captain. He was also team captain of the wrestling team. And while he was at Brown, he was selected for the U.S. Olympic team in wrestling and won a gold medal in light heavyweight freestyle wrestling in the 1924 Olympics in Paris. He also played professional football for the Providence, Rhode Island Steamrollers and won an NFL championship in 1928. And in the off-season, he was a professional wrestler. I'd like to introduce Howie Brummage from the class of 1999 to present Ruth Terwilliger, John Spellman's sister, and Don Terwilliger, his nephew, to accept the award.
Yes, my name is Don Terwilliger. Some of you may remember the Terwilliger name from the state line. Yes. Those were my grandparents. I worked here a lot during vacations. And I think I was expected to remain on, but I had other plans. John was born in 1899, which is about 102 years ago. He was the oldest of 6 children on the farm over on Hall Hill Road in Summers. Correct that. It's on the way to East Long Meadow. The homestead is still there, in amongst all the new ranches and castles up there. And the main barn is still there. My grandfather and grandmother raised those 6 children on a small farm. And 3 boys went to Brown, and the 3 girls went to Teachers College in Willimantic. Of course, this was in the days before electricity, telephones, cars. And all 6 went to high school in Enfield. And oftentimes they walked from Hall Hill down to Somersville to catch the trolley. Sometimes they took a horse and buggy to Somersville and caught the trolley. But many times, especially in the afternoon, one or more had to walk from Somersville out to Hall Hill and then help do chores. And my mother was the youngest of 6. She's here tonight, as you've seen. She's a mere 95. And she is well on her way to 96. She and I got down on our hands and knees and dug some potatoes on Labor Day weekend, and she outdid me. And when we finished, she was able to get up quicker and easier than I. She has an older sister and an older brother. Pauline, who still lives in Willimantic, is 100. And her brother Dick, a retired doctor, is 97, I believe. And all 3 of these people still live in the homes that they have lived in for many, many years. Each one is, for all intents and purposes, alone. They do have help, but they maintain the house and carry on social life. Quite a story. I vaguely remember my Uncle John. I spent the first 6 years of my life on that same farm. And even then, despite the difficulties involved with transportation, getting around, and so forth and so on, lack of money, there were many gatherings on weekends and especially during the summer for picnics and horseshoes and even a tennis match. And my mother, of course, remembers him, but I can fill in secondhand. John was an exuberant person, well-liked, ruggedly handsome until his later days, as you can see from that picture. He was often compared to, and some of you remember this character, the French angel, Maurice Tillet, who was not, known for his good looks. But John was a hard worker, very strong, and in those days, if you weighed 175 and were close to 6 feet, you were big. And he loved animals. He loved people. He was a wit, had a sense of humor. And so this paved a lot of the highways that he was to take. had a great career here in Townsendville. I'm sorry I could not find clippings that would have given you some idea of his feats here in high school, but he was outstanding. And of course, in those days, people, and some of you here remember, played without much in the way of protection, and it was all, as they say today, smash mouth football. No spread formations or a passing game. It was, just collisions. And he loved it. So when he had a chance to go to Brown, he jumped at the chance, and he had 4 great years there. And as has been mentioned, he was captain of the football team and captain of the wrestling team. And he went off to Paris and beat a Swedish fellow in the final match for the championship for the gold medal in the light heavyweight division. And so he came back a hero and started in professional football and professional wrestling. And as was mentioned, he played for several years with the old Providence Steamrollers. And then later in his career with the Boston Redskins, who were playing, I forget, they might have been at Fenway, I'm not sure. But you can imagine what they made in those days. I don't believe that all of those fellows wore helmets. They still played without helmets. I think they had a choice. And for what they made as a payday, probably didn't exceed $100. I think $100 would have been a lot for a person playing football then. So he went into wrestling, got involved with the crowd. A contemporary of his was Gus Sonnenberg, who had been a wrestling star at Dartmouth and went into, I believe it was Dartmouth, and went into the professional game. And they palled around a lot. And Gus Sonnenberg was known for his flying tackle. And John was looking for something, different. And so he took from Gus Sonnenberg's playbook and developed his own flying tackle, which he had great success with. And at this time we were living in West Springfield, and John would be on a tour around these smaller cities like Holyoke and so forth, wrestling. And they would come to the house from Providence on their way up to Holyoke, say, and it might be 4 of them in a car, or 6 of them, or maybe just 2. But there were 3 heroes and 3 villains. And of course, they would take turns from one town to another. Who was going to be the hero and the good guy, and the other would be the villain. And so they would come and party a little bit, go to Holyoke and wrestle, and come back and party some more. Then they would pile into the car and head out to the next town. It would have been fitting and proper for John's son, John Jr., to be here tonight to accept this award. He was my age. He was my best friend growing up. But the good Lord took him early in his 40s. And I think probably somewhere Johnny is aware. A great person. Sadness came in the life of many of the Spellman family when John decided to go on a world tour in the wrestling circuit. And he left by boat for New Zealand, ended up in South Africa, never came home again. No one from the family ever saw him again. He never came back. No one ever went down. He went down there hoping to find his fortune. He worked around the gold mines. had jobs. He was a civil engineer, so he was able to get work. And never wrestled again, of course. Time was moving on. And finally, while he was working as an engineer on one of the dams down there in southern Rhodesia, he fell ill with malaria and he died at the age of 66. So roughly, very close to half his life was spent in this country, and the second half was spent in southern Rhodesia. But he was a legend in his own time. What happened, nobody knows. And as with the other members of the family, when we reminisce, we always think of John. Because he, without trying, was most often the life of the party and the person that people looked to and enjoyed and admired. So I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame for my mother. She, I thought, was going to say these words, but she deferred, saying she was too bashful. And my mother, among other things, was a teacher in the elementary schools of Thompsonville for many, many years. But she declined the offer, so I'm her substitute. But this has been a great honor for our family, and it's been a privilege and great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Jeff Wheeler graduated from Enfield High School in 1981. While at Enfield High School, he played soccer, baseball, and basketball. And it was in basketball that he scored 1,081 points in 3 years. He played in several parks and recreation leagues, and some of his teams were league champions. He was at the University of Maine. He lettered in basketball for 4 years. He's a 3-year starter and scored over 900 points. He's a basketball instructor at Syracuse University, St. Bonaventure College, Holy Cross College, and he was a star player in the winter basketball leagues in Enfield, Greenfield, Westfield, and Northampton, Mass. I'd like to introduce Bob Keller from the class of 2000 to present Jeff Wheeler for this award.
Thank you and good night. Hey Donnie, was this short enough? I actually thought George Bush would come out and give us a speech like he did last night. I thought that would be nice. I would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for this great evening and this great honor, and thank all the guests that are here tonight, especially my family, my mother, my father, my wife, and my mother and father-in-law, and my sister-in-law are all here tonight. There's many people that I would like to thank for my success as an athlete at Enfield High. I start with my junior high coaches, Joe Basowitz, Bernie LaPlante, and Bob Keller. They played a vital role in my beginnings as a basketball player. The next thanks goes to Lou Secondo, who is also here tonight. It was great to see him earlier, and Lou was responsible for getting a lot of us all-star basketball players from the whole area to play in tournaments in Springfield and Torrington and around the surrounding areas. And he put a lot of time and effort in, and Lou, thank you very much. It's great to see you here tonight. Very big thanks goes to Coach Bob Brummage. He was my high school coach for 3 years, and he was the one that gave me my first opportunity from day one. And he was a tough coach and made us all work very hard, and I'm sure he still is a very tough coach. I'm still wondering where he got the lifetime supply of clipboards to shatter. I mean, he shattered more clipboards in that locker room. Are you still doing that, Coach? Okay, the next three people played the biggest role in my success: my parents and my brother. I thank my brother for the countless one-on-one games we played in our driveway and the success he had as an athlete, which made me want to succeed. He was a great role model, and thank you, Jay. The next person I'd like to thank is my mother, who is here tonight. She deserves more thanks than I can mention. Thank you for the countless rides to and from practice and games, the meals at all hours, the laundry, the homework. She did it all, and to me, she is a Hall of Fame mom. Thank you, Mom. The last person I would like to thank is my dad, who's also here tonight. Go ahead. He's the one that taught me what dedication, desire, and competition is all about. I will never forget the countless hours he gave me teaching, practicing athletics. The best thing he ever did was actually something he didn't do. He never forced me to play a sport, but let me choose. He was a professional football player, and I have never played one down of football. Everybody asks me, when they see me now, you must have played football. Well, I put on a few pounds. So that was one of the nicest things he could do, is to let me make my own choice. He also has a pretty good jump shot. In closing, I'd like to again thank the Hall of Fame committee and everybody in this room tonight for supporting the Hall of Fame and Enfield Athletics. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our awards tonight. I'd just like to take a minute to recognize previous inductees who are here tonight. From the class of 2000, Joe Basewitz, John Bloomstrom, Bob Keller, Bill Teed, and Sophie Kriz, the wife of Joe. From 1999, Howie Brummage. From 1998, Lisa Carrera. This is 1998, not 1978. Lisa Carrera, Matt Floska, Fran Slattery. From the class of 1997, Ken Goosh, Rich Goosh, Edmund Kokoka, Charlie Ragno, Amy Romano, Cindy Turcott, Don Whittle. And from the class of 1996, Cookie Brumage, Iggy Murawski, Tony Romano, Bill Spangswick, and Russ Tyler. With much relief, I'd like to turn it back over to Mike Kottner for the closing remarks.
Let's give another round of applause for Len Sparks from Step in the Boat. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. There's some people here in the back corner, and the placement wasn't my choice. There's representatives from the town council. These folks, you folks may not know it, but they're our silent partners. They're very supportive of this organization from day one. They've kept their hands away from the organization, but through the leadership and the efforts of Lou Fiore, they maintain a strong presence in spirit in Lou. So those folks need a round of applause, and they're really showing support. There's a couple other individuals I'd like to briefly mention. In the program, we talked about new individuals coming on board. Well, there's 3 or 4 individuals that came on board this year and really took the committee by storm. They stepped up, they wanted to do things, they wanted to be active. Those individuals are Paul De Silva, Scott Merrick, I know is here, Jerry Wingen. Along with Tim Jensen, they chaired the best golf tournament we've ever had yesterday. The rain held out for us, and I'm proud to say I believe the Hall of Fame raised over $3,000. In closing, I'd also like to direct you to the Enfield.org website. The Hall of Fame has a link, and everything that happened here this evening with the class photo and all the biographies will also be placed on there very shortly through the efforts of Carl Newshafer on our committee. I'd like to thank all of our committee. We meet about 9 months out of the year, probably for an hour or two during the evening. But it's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun. Thank you all.